today's workshop, we will be going over 4 different moves. 3 of them are based off headstand, so it's headstand, head invert, head hollow, and then elbow freeze. Those are the 4 freezes we'll be learning. And maybe from like headstand or head invert or head hollow to handstand, maybe I'll throw that in there. Depending on how much time we have, it's going to seem like a pretty short workshop today. So we'll see how it goes. So we're going to start like we always do. If you don't have any experience with headstands, I'll teach the very basic from 0 to headstand, and then going from headstand to invert, or head hollow and then head invert. And then I'll be doing elbow freeze as well. So if you catch if you catch where you are at any point, like let's say you have headstand but you don't have head hollow or head invert, then you can pick up from here from that point in the workshop. So I guess let's go ahead, get started. Super basic with headstand. All you're gonna do, like I say in my workshop all the time, or my stream all the time, you're gonna rest on the top of your head. You're gonna be right on top. It's not gonna be on your forehead. It's not gonna be in the back of your head. It's gonna be right on top for regular headstand. And with your hands, you're gonna put them in front of you, and you're gonna make a little triangle position, a little tripod between your head and your hands. So it's gonna look like this, and you're gonna start off in a plank with your feet on the ground. All right, so you have your tripod between your hands and your head, and then you also have your feet out in front of you like a tripod. What you're going to do is walk your feet up until your hips are as high above your head as you can get them, and then lift up one of your legs, and then from here, once you're comfortable, try hopping. And as you hop, try leaning your weight onto your head and your hands, and then once you're comfortable with this, try hopping and putting one of your knees, or both your knees, on your elbows. And then from here, if you're comfortable with this, try picking up one knee, and then try picking up the other. And then once you're here, you can play around with different leg positions. So super basic, that is headstand. There's going to be a lot of tutorials for it. Really basic. If you don't have headstand, it's going to be headstand plank, walk your hips as high as you can, and then tap, knees to elbows, and then lift. All right, so I'll quickly go over headstand to handstand kicking up. And it's just like how we do in my regular stream. What you're going to want to do is keep that Asian squat like this in your headstand. And you're also going to want to have that Asian squat in your handstand. Okay? So when you're doing your headstand, your hand placement, you're going to want to have your fingers pointing, I guess, towards your head. You don't want them out like this or anything like that, because when you push up, you're going to get right into handstand position. So have your fingers pointing forward. So I'm in this position with my headstand. I have the tuck, and I'm going to push up with my legs, bring it back once I handstand. So kick up, pull them in. So that's going to be the transition, the super basic explanation. But just remember, when you're doing a headstand, keep those legs tight, knees to chest as much as you can, and then heels to butt as much as you can. And you're going to pump straight up. And once you get to handstand, lock it back in. Show you again. So you're here, fingers facing forward, arms shoulder width apart. You're here right on top of your head, not in front, not behind. You're going to pump straight up, then bring your knees back in. From here, push up. Bring those knees in. So that's going up from head to handstand. It's going to be a little bit tricky because if you don't have headstand or handstand down yet, as soon as you push up, you might lose balance, you might walk a little bit. Perfectly normal. It's just a matter of practice. So did really brief explanations for headstand and headstand to handstand. Let's see. So yeah, with headstand, the most important thing with this is to try different leg positions. So if you have headstand with your legs closed in, try doing a straddle, try doing Nike, other side, pike, other side, figure 4, whatever you want. That's gonna help you because once you're doing transitions with freezes and stuff like that, you're probably not going to be using the same variation of headstand over again. So really get used to having your legs in different positions. Headstands, it's just kind of like overlooked. It's not one of those moves where like, oh, he did a headstand, you know, as his finisher. But it just depends. It depends how you want to present it, right? So that's why also like working on different leg positions, making it like stand out more, not only just standing out more, but also if I'm always using the same leg position in my headstand, it's going to count as a repeat. It's going to look boring. So switch up those leg positions. Like if I'm here, figure 4, do a lotus, crunched in, Nike, pike, whatever. So that way when I transition to doing headstand or head freeze or whatever, if I'm in the middle of a transition using my head, it'll look different every time. So yeah, that is pretty much headstand in a nutshell. Anything else, any other questions? After this, I'm gonna move on to head hollow, which I think that's what a lot of people are here for. But let's start with head hollow. So for head hollow, there's a couple different ways people will do it. I personally like to do it on the top of my head. Most people will push it back to the back of their head when they start. I recommend learning it at first on the top of your head, and then once you get used to it, you can push to the back of your head. But basically, the thing with head hollow is that you want to start in a headstand like this, and the goal is to put your arms behind you. Like, so if your head is here and you're doing a headstand like this, the goal, if the floor is here, is to move the arms as far back as you can. And then once you get that flexibility in your shoulders, then you can start bending the head and using the back of your head. So I like to use the top of my head to start, and I always like to use the top of my head every time I do a head hollow, head invert, anything like that. I feel more grounded, and also, unless I'm planning to, that's going to be the last freeze I do, that's usually what I use because I'm going to transition out of it. So with that being said, I like to also start with bicycle legs. So just like in handstand, I recommended starting with bicycle legs. I also recommend that for head hollow. So you can do a lot of different things with your head hollow, your different leg positions. But to start, I like to use bicycle legs. And so basically you're gonna start headstand like this, bicycle legs. And most people, they'll start leaning their hips back and this leg behind is gonna anchor backwards. But I actually like to start with my hands walking back. So they're in line with my head, a little bit further back. And then let's say this is as far as you can go. You want to try and inch it as far as you can, really stretching out those shoulders and opening them up from here, and then start leaning back with your legs. But notice I can open up my shoulders a lot more. And this, essentially, the further back you can go, the more flexible you are in your shoulders, and the further you can reach back with your hands, the more, how do I say this? You have more space for you to ground yourself. So that way you won't tip over. So if you can reach further back, the better. Definitely the main goal is to just reach back as far as you can. And same thing for head invert. So first things first, head, I like to be on top. Second thing, reach back as far as you can. And you're gonna want to you may not have that flexibility at first right here. That same, I guess, similar to that muscle that you stretch when doing air chairs is going to be similar. And then once you get used to like a certain position with your arms behind you, you're going to practice leaning your weight onto your hands, or more onto your hands. So you're going to be in your headstand, bicycle legs, pull those arms back. Then once you're here, I can go further, walk it back, and then practice leaning onto my hands, putting more weight onto them, and then leaning those hips back. Notice my hips, they're gonna go from a closed position and open out. And this opening of my hips is gonna let that back leg sink further down. Whew. If the arms go wide, it is not bad, but try and do it as narrow as possible. So you might be like this at first, but you wanna try and be more narrow. If it feels like you can't go back further, pretty much you would just have to keep doing it. There's not really that many stretches for you to get this. So every time I do it, I just try to do this, and I know you're talking about this back part that's like really flexing, but the only way to really get more flexible is to keep doing it. So in this position, you really have to, like, every time you have your hands down, I like to crawl my fingers back on the floor and really pull this right here, as if I'm like pulling myself. But really, as far as like this move goes, there's not really a good way around it. The best way around it is just to do it, to get that flexibility. So when I started like barely past my head like this, and my arms were really wide. But over time, they started to narrow, and they also started to go back even further. And I still think my arms are relatively wide compared to some b-boys that normally do this. So get used to the arm position. Try and do it as narrow as you can. Try to reach back as far as you can. Get used to leaning that weight back onto your hands. Once you have it on your hands, then you can practice opening up those hips, letting that back leg drop back. But don't worry about the legs just yet. Worry about just opening up those hips and rotating it. So I'll show you again. Maybe I'll scoot back. So you're here in headstand, bicycle legs, move my hands back, as far as I can, put more weight on my hands, open out those hips. Don't worry about the legs, just open out the hips. And then once you're used to the hips, then you can start worrying about different leg positions. Whew. Man, I haven't done head hollow in a long time. Not really my favorite move to do. But those are the two main things. Get used to the arms reaching, and then also the hips sinking back. I haven't done head hollow in a long time, but that is pretty much the gist of it. Yeah, head hollow is one of those moves where, and it's kind of like invert. Well, I guess invert you can practice on the wall, like really like putting your hands on the wall and then dipping your head through. But I find I get the most amount of stretch and flex when I do, or like practicing the flex and all that stuff when I actually do the move. So yes, for head hollow, the main things is reaching with those arms, trying to get it as far back as possible. Every time, I always try to crawl those fingers back further and further, adding more weight onto your hands, so shifting my weight from my head more to my hands, and then sinking those hips back. And then after you sink those hips back and get used to leaning that weight, then you can start playing with those legs. With head hollow, the main thing that differentiates it from the invert is that your hips are sinking outwards or backwards. Invert, your hips are curving in. So again, the head hollow, you can do whatever leg position you want. Doesn't really matter. I'd like to scoot back more. So you start in headstand, bicycle legs, hands back, and then if you want, once you get used to this, you can put the back of your head on the ground. I usually don't like the way it looks. It looks kind of like choppy to me, so I usually don't do it. But if that's something you fancy, you're more than welcome to use the back of your head. Once you're used to shifting your weight more towards your hands, you have that flexibility, and you're starting to play around with your legs. So that's pretty much it for head hollow. Any questions? Head invert, as I was saying before, it is not that much different. So everything from the waist to your head is pretty much going to be the same. You want to reach back as far as you can. I like to use the top of my head. If you want to use the back of your head, more than welcome to. If you're used to doing a Hong 10 freeze with your head, like leaning a lot of weight on your head, it's really similar to that. But yes, same body position from pretty much your torso upwards. And then instead of bringing your legs back and folding those hips backwards, you got to pull those hips in and pike everything. So if hollow is like this, let me see where I can get a good amount of space. If hollow is reaching back like this, head invert is folding those hips in and everything is piked. So you can just practice doing this and just bringing your knees in. So I think this is a little bit easier to practice. It's more like a headstand than it is like a head hollow. But I would say if you can head hollow, head invert would be relatively easier. So if you get a head hollow, you get a head invert. That's pretty much the way I think about it. It's a head hollow, you bring those legs in. That's pretty much it. As the goal of this head freeze to have complete weight on your arms, or should angle, yeah, so 70, it should be like, maybe like 50-50, something about like 60-40, something like that. But at the end of the day, between your head and your hands, you find what's best for you. So like I always, as far as hollow backs go, I always prefer to do like actual hollow backs versus head hollows. So whenever I do head hollows, more of my weight is on my arms, and then that allows me to push up from it. For head invert, more of my weight is on my head, just because I'm not used to like doing inverts, and also I don't intend to go up usually. So it depends on what you like, but I would say it's going to be close to 50-50, 60-40, give or take. It just depends. So yeah, weight distribution, a lot of it should be on your head still, but you're constantly pushing towards your hands. So I would say like 40% of your weight at least should be like leaning towards your hands, if not more. So especially with head hollow. With head invert, it doesn't really matter so much because you're kind of in a line. So like when I do my head invert, I'm actually kind of like, it's kind of like a Hong 10 freeze where everything's in a line. I could reach back further, but it's not as far as it's going to be with head hollow. And also my body's not leaning backwards, so it's not forcing me to put more weight. So again, if I do it and head hollow is like this, leaning back, head invert is the same thing, but my hips closing in, piking, and then play around with different leg positions. And me being on the top of my head allows me to look in different directions. So I like to look at my foot when I do it, and then it allows me to transition or whatever. So I like to do my head invert better than my head hollow. I like to do hollows better than head hollows. So as far as these moves go, you using them, whatever you actually decide to use, completely up to you, whatever you like better. So any questions? We learned quickly, we went over from nothing to headstand, from headstand to head hollow, and then head hollow to head invert. But if you, like I said, if you get a head hollow, you get a head invert. Same exact body position like we went over, but bring your legs to pike. All right, so before we move on, just like I said in headstand, like I was saying, you want to try different leg positions so that way you look more dynamic when you're doing it. Same thing with head hollow. So you have your bicycle with your leg like this. You have the double leg hollow. You have, you can do like a figure four. You can do an eagle. I can't really eagle. You can do a lotus hollow back. You can do a lot of different things. Same thing with head invert. So you can do Nike, pike, open Nike, like air baby. Doesn't really matter. But the reason why you want to learn all this is also for the same reason as headstand. You want to be a lot more dynamic. So like let's say I want to use head invert differently in the same battle or a different battle later on. Like I have another variation, or I use it as a transition between something else. If I already did a pike like this, maybe I should switch it up and do like a lotus or whatever, like a lotus head invert. So I'm here, I do my lotus head invert, and then I can transition it to something else. So basically, it just allows more opportunities for you to actually use the move more than once, basically repeat, technically, but it just looks different, adds more dynamics. And yeah, it also just looks cooler, so gives you more options. With a small tip that I don't really use it that much. I use it more with regular hollow backs than with head hollows or than head inverts. So I would say like head invert would be the least, head hollow would be the most, and then hollow back would be the most. But as you open out those shoulders, you want to stick out that chest. So I use this with hollow backs, but with head hollows, head inverts, I use it a lot less because I have weight on my head.
and then it allows me to shift my weight. Me shifting my weight to my hands kind of like opens up my chest for me, but just keep in mind, as you open up those shoulders, open up that chest as well, and it should allow you to reach back further. So that's just like a little tip for you guys. Yes, just do, basically, secret to head hollow and head invert. Do not worry about how far back your leg goes. Do not worry about how low it goes. Don't worry about how low it goes in your head invert. Just worry about your shoulder flexibility first and foremost. Worry about your flexibility, and then worry about your balance. You shifting your weight from your head to your hands. Once you get that, then you can start worrying about how far down your leg is going, or how deep your hollow back is, or whatever. So in head hollow, how far do you twist your head backwards to move where your twist your head backwards? Oh, like doing like this. I don't know. Like I don't really like doing it. So I'm usually like this because I like to have that straight line all the way through. But like when you have this, it kind of breaks that line, and it's just like not really symmetrical. And I like things symmetrical. I'm just like OCD. But there's really not a gauge. Like I've seen people with like really flexible necks, like kids. Like it looks like their body's like snapping in half when they do it. So it just depends. Do whatever's comfortable for you. If it hurts, I recommend you don't do it. So that's why I say doing it with your neck straight is the best. If you want to bend it a little bit, you can. I kind of feel like if this is the floor, it's kind of like rolling towards, I guess, like this the spiral part of my head. That's kind of where like my maximum limit. So if I'm on the top of my head and then I want to go like to the back of my head, that spiral will usually be my limit for me. So it might be different for you. Your spiral might be somewhere else on your head. But yeah, the way I like to think about it for me is like, oh, I go from the top of my head to the spiral. That's usually like the furthest I'll go, just because it gets uncomfortable and then it doesn't look as good in my opinion. So yeah. Oh yeah, wait, before we do that, let's go to going up to handstand for all of these, and then you can apply this to inverts and hollow backs. Head hollow, pretty much you go straight up to hollow back. I don't think I'm going to be going over that as much, but head invert's the same thing. So the only difference between going up from headstand to handstand and head invert to handstand or head invert is that like my arms, instead of being in front of me and closer together, they're going to be further out because unless you're really flexible and you can have them like way behind you and just straight, but my arms are like further out. And then if I want to go to handstand, or if I want to go to invert, which I'm really bad at, like I'll push up, my head remains pulling through like this. But if I want to go to handstand, I have to push up and then look at the ground. But the legs are going to be the exact same thing. So legs crunched in, and then pop up, bring it back. So, like, it's going to look like this, for a head invert at least. Your legs are crunched in, like this. I'm going to put some weight on my hands, pump up, and bring it back once I go to handstand. Ready? Same thing. So you just have to get used to your hands being further out. And it's the same principle. So like once I push up, my head will like flip up and look at the ground because that's how I handstand. But if you want to go invert or head or side invert, you can do that as well. I haven't done side invert in a while, but if that's the case, all I do is continue to look through. So if I'm here. If I want to pop up to side invert, I just pop up, push those knees, crunching back, and then continue to look. So instead of like looking, changing my view, I keep that same view. I only use those legs to pump. But that's a whole nother tangent. Same thing with hollow back. But hollow back, you don't have those legs to pump up. So you only get, you pretty much have to continue leaning backwards. So if you want to go from head hollow to handstand, you have to bring your legs in and push up again. So, I don't even know if I can do it. You pretty much have to go from head hollow to head invert and then push up. But for head hollow to hollow back, which I'm really bad at now, I have to continue to lean back. And this is going to be like a little bit over for a lot of people. But you're going to continue to lean back so that way, as I push up with my hands, I can open up my chest more, and get a better hollow back. So it's gonna be terrible, but I'll give it a shot. So here, and head hollow, and then I keep leaning back. Oh, whoops. until I can push up on my arms. So basically, my upper body, or my lower body is like leaning, pulling my head away from the ground. So that's kind of the go-to for going up. So if you all just want to go to handstand, then pull it to head invert, bring those knees in, pop up. If you want to go to from head invert to invert or side invert, just pump those knees up. Don't worry about your head. Just keep looking straight. And then head hollow back to hollow. You have to continue to lean. That's gonna pull you. So yeah, it was crazy. I fell on my couch. So no shame. All right, I haven't done it in a long time. Doesn't matter. Okay, so elbow freeze. We already go over this in my regular stream, so I won't get too deep into the weeds on this. So here's what I talk about on my normal stream every single time. What you're gonna do for elbow freeze is place your elbow on the ground. You can put your dominant hand, whatever arm you want to use. Put that elbow, that whole forearm, straight on the ground. You don't want it diagonal. You don't want it sideways. You want it straight. And then halfway up, shoulder width across, place your other hand. This is going to be the hand position. You're going to be along this whole forearm from fingertip all the way to elbow on the ground, halfway up, shoulder width apart, place your other hand. So it's going to be like this. This position right here, okay? And then you're going to start in plank. So if you've never done elbow freeze, starting from 0, you're going to be in plank like this. Whoops. You're going to be in plank, and then walk those feet towards your hands until your hip is as high as it can go. So for me, it's not directly above my shoulders, but this is as high as I can go. So from here, lift up one leg and practice hopping and shifting your weight onto your elbow and your hand. Okay, from here, hop, and then flex your legs and your core every time. As soon as you hop up, always flex that leg and that core. So hop up, hold it for a second, come back down. Hop it, hold it for a bit longer, come back down. So usually in my stream, I have people do it for a whole minute. But assuming you have that, the main idea as soon as you kick up is to kick up, tighten those legs, engage that core, and hold it. And if you're trying to build up to it, or even if you can do it and you're tapping a little bit, the key is to just prolong each tap. So if I tap and hold it for 1 second, the next one try tapping it, picking up and holding it for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, things like that. So from here, pick up, hold, and then keep those legs tight. For starters, I would say it doesn't really matter what leg position you use as long as you're keeping it flexed. I recommend pulling those knees towards you or doing a Nike freeze with elbow. But I would say if you're starting, find something that works for you. It can be bicycle, crunch legs, Nike, straddle, doesn't matter. Whatever works for you, do that first. Find the most comfortable leg position and then build up from there. So J-Rock likes bicycle. Love to see it. So yeah, for me, I like to do Nike better. But if bicycle works for you, more power to you. Find a good starting point that works for you. And I think that's kind of the key for all freezes. Find a leg position that works for you and then build from there. Because a lot of people are like, oh, keep your legs penciled, keep your legs in straddle. But if you're not comfortable with it, then it's kind of like learning a new move all over again. All right, so a lot of people will ask, where exactly on your elbow are you resting? Because when I'm doing it, I'm not actually, let me see, where's a good spot? Okay, here. I'm not actually like resting my entire forearm sometimes. And those of you that are experienced with doing elbow freeze, you'll notice like my wrist, when you do it, you'll have your fingertips on the ground, your elbow on the ground, and your wrist, there'll be a small like cavity down here, whatever. And that's completely normal. You don't have to have everything on the ground. So the way I like to think about it, if you're looking at the cliff notes, is that basically from the halfway point of my elbow
and down, like this whole meaty chunk of my elbow. This is the main part that you're using to hold yourself up. And then your fingertips are kind of gripping the ground, kind of like if you're doing handstand. So if I'm falling forward, I use those fingers. It's the exact same concept, but you have a wider base this time. And then you also have your other hand on the ground when you're starting. And then also, the reason why I have most of my weight on this area right here is because all my weight from my shoulders is right on top of this. Right on top of my shoulders is my hips. And then right on top of my hips is my feet or my legs. So when I'm doing elbow freeze, this part right here is gonna be everything that's supporting me directly under. Basically be on the meat of the elbow from the halfway point down to the end of the elbow. Use your fingertips for balance if you're leaning too far forward or back. Same principle applies as the handstand. So if you haven't checked it out yet, check out my handstand workshop. Basically the same concept with the hands is what you're going to use with your forearm and your other hand. So the next thing is to, a lot of people also ask me, where do you look? So for starters, I like to look at the wrist. So if I have both hands down like this, I am looking at this wrist of which that elbow is down. So whatever elbow is down, I look at that wrist. And that's usually how I start it. And then if you get more comfortable with it, you can start looking around. It doesn't matter. But if I'm trying to balance it, I'll be looking at my wrist. If I'm trying to if I'm battling or something like that and I want to use it, I'll be looking at the opponent, of course. But I just, for balance purposes and training purposes, just look at my wrist. And then, so going from elbow to, I guess before we get from elbow to handstand, I'll go over opening out your chest. So this is the same concept as pretty much every freeze. You can apply this idea to any freeze, and it's going to be the same thing as going from like hang glide to baby freeze to chair freeze. When you do your hang glide, your chest is closed. Your baby freeze or your side chair, your shoulder opens out, your chest faces out, and then in chair, your chest is completely out. Same thing with elbow. So basically, when you're doing your regular elbow freeze with two hands, I'm looking at my wrist, everything is closed. And then once I'm used to this, I'm gonna try and go on my fingertips of my free hand, and this is gonna allow me to open out my chest a little bit more, just a tiny bit more. You probably can't even notice it, but if I'm here, let's go Nike. Fingertips, shift a little bit of the weight onto my elbow. It's gonna allow me to open up my chest a little bit. And then this is kind of like step one before we're doing one hand elbow freeze. First thing is going from flat hand to fingertips. It's gonna be step one, opening out your chest. But the more comfortable you are going onto your fingertips, you're gonna try opening out that shoulder. So notice when I'm on my fingertips, I can do fingertips with my chest completely closed. But I can use my legs and angle my hips, open up my chest, and practice holding that. So the idea behind this is going on your fingertips to allow more weight to shift onto your elbow side. Once you feel comfortable with that, you can start opening out that chest. So from flat hand, go like this, go on your fingertips, practice shifting weight. And then once you're comfortable shifting weight, you can try opening out your chest until you're comfortable going to one hand. So opening out your chest and doing a one-hand elbow freeze is kind of like the equivalent of doing a chair freeze, I guess, or an air chair or something like that. So the degree of your shoulder or your chest will be opened out all the way. Let's see. So yeah, the progression will be flat hand, fingertips, shifting. You can open out your chest and then do one hand. You can try balancing it, you can try sticking it, doesn't really matter. Whatever you want to do. Like we talked about in my last workshop with stabs is if you can balance it, you don't have to go that far to learn how to stick it. But if you learn how to stick it first, just like going into it like this, you may have some trouble trying to balance it. But not saying that everyone should learn how to do a one-hand elbow balance, but just something to think about. All right, so going from elbow to handstand, I go over this briefly in my stream, but I will go over it more in depth here, especially because we have a lot of time.
So it's going to be the same thing going from headstand to handstand. Same idea with basically the torso all the way down. Idea is the exact same. You're going to have your leg crunched in, and you can also be a Nike as well. As long as you have one leg crunched in, you can do both, doesn't matter. You're in elbow freeze. Keep your legs tight, knees towards your chest. Pop out. Once you hit your handstand, pull it back in, tighten up. So I'll do both legs crunched in first. So you're gonna have your legs tight, like this. And then the other freeze is handstand. You wanna also practice holding your legs tight like this. Okay, from here, all you wanna do, the only transition in the middle is when your legs shoot up and extend. You wanna go from closed pike freeze, come up, back to closed pike freeze on a different level. So you're here, knees to your chest, leg squat, push up, bring it back. And notice when I do this transition, some people will try and just lift up their elbow and not move their hand. I like to reposition my hand. So if my hands are in line, like right here, I like to move my hand in line with my other one. Basically, at this halfway point of my elbow, that's where I like to replace my hand. Because when I was teaching it, if you're halfway through and shoulder width apart, I'm replacing this middle part with that hand. So my handstand will be straight. A lot of people will try and push up and their handstand will be like all wobbly and unbalanced, and they're gonna have to walk to adjust. So I like to go ahead and move it, but it's gonna be hard at first. So if you're new to this, don't expect to get this on the first try. It might actually be easier to just pick up with your hand already there, but I would say in the long run, you're gonna have a lot of fixing to do, because once you pump up and your arms are not really in line, you're gonna have to walk it. Let's see, an elbow freeze, are you trying to engage both shoulders as much as a handstand? Yes, that's a great question. So yes, basically in my handstand workshop, I talked about reaching like this. Maybe not to the same degree, but you're gonna want to try to emulate the same thing. And that's something I didn't go over. But you're not gonna do it with both shoulders necessarily. So I'm in elbow freeze like this. Let's see. I'm not really gonna engage the shoulder that much because the goal is to have more of my weight on my elbow. But I wanna reach out with my shoulder. So from here, reach out. And this is also gonna allow me to open out to do one hand freezes, or one hand elbow. So I'm here. If I have if I have it closed, notice, oh, you can't even see. Yeah, so notice if I have my elbow closed, I'm gonna start like closing in like this and doing kind of like an elbow chair. So from here, but if I engage my shoulder, I can pop it back up and be right on top of my elbow. It's the same principle of kind of like extending. It's kind of like you're reaching for something, but instead of from your shoulder to your hand like in handstand, it's gonna be shoulder to elbow. So I don't know if it's a bad habit per se, but yes, the hand position will save you a lot of time if you just do the repositioning from the start, from the get-go. Because when I used to just pop up like this too, and my arms would not be in the same line. And then I would always have to walk my handstand around and fix it. But let's say I'm doing like elbow freeze to handstand to, I don't know, like another freeze, like Nike. So if I pop up from here to here, I have to shift my weight from my Nike or my center all the way to this hand, because I do my Nike on this hand. So I'm here, I pop up and I have to shift my weight. I can't really do it, but if I shift my hand to right under me, to where my center is, under my shoulder, it'll allow me to go to Nike a lot easier. So elbow, handstand, Nike. Can do it a lot easier. So yeah, just something to work on if you're not doing that already. Just like a super small tip, reposition that elbow, or reposition that hand, switching to where they're both in line. Main thing is for transitions, and I can go over this more specifically in maybe another workshop, something like that, but you want to have between the two freezes, so let's take elbow and handstand, and I want to do a Nike freeze, like a pike Nike like this, instead of like an open Nike where my hip is open, just have it pike like this. I want to have the freeze for both of those. So handstand like this, I want to be able to do this. I also want to be able to elbow like this. And then the only transition is here, bring it back. So freeze to freeze. Elbow to handstand. So, we're here, elbow, freeze to handstand, freeze. Again, here, with both legs crunched. With straight legs, yeah, I mean, you could do straight legs. It's more strength based for transitions. You could do the straight leg one, but as far as efficiency goes, unless you're junior, it's probably like less effective to do straight legs unless you're just trying to work out. But as far as like efficiency goes, definitely use that leg pump. Whether you're in Nike, you're in what is this, like pike or crunch legs, definitely use that pump. We went over headstand, headstand to handstand, and then head hollow, and then head invert, and then going up from those, and then also elbow freeze, and then opening out into one arm elbow freeze, and then going from elbow freeze to handstand. If there are no more questions, I'll be on to like 8-10. How'd you even get into that from around? Elbow freeze, one hand elbow freeze, I don't really know. I mean, there are a lot of ways. You can probably do like air baby, like do a round into air baby and then pop up to elbow or something like that. Or do a handstand to one hand elbow, something like that. So, I don't know. I hardly ever use one hand elbow freeze. You can do like footwork, turn around, air baby to elbow freeze, something like that. I don't really know. I can do it. I just don't like doing elbow freeze that much. Even though like I used to have like this bump on here, it got better. My elbow got stronger, and also yeah, I guess that's another thing. Like you might have a bump on your elbow. If you get that bump, rest it, ice it. Do not do anything on it. I was told like, oh, just push through, just like man up and push through. Do not do that. It's the worst mistake ever. Let it heal, and then get back to it. Be real patient when learning elbow freeze, especially like when you're doing drops or elbow flares or anything like this, or elbow tracks, anything like that. As soon as you start getting a bruise or a bump, rest that elbow. Can't stress that enough. I guess this is something you don't really run into with like handstands or stabs. So yeah, definitely one thing that I overlooked when I was learning it. Two-hand elbow freeze may not be a problem, but when learning one-hand elbow freeze, elbow flares, elbow tracks, you're definitely going to get a bruise. I highly recommend not pushing through it. Just rest. Turning elbow freeze. Oh, like opening out your chest. I assume turning your elbow freeze will be like opening out your chest. But yeah, allowing yourself to open out your chest for elbow will help you with learning elbow track. So I guess before I get into the nitty gritty of it, if you're closed like this will help you get used to opening out for elbow track. Basically, yeah, like I said before, the progression is flat hand. Really extend that shoulder first, which is one good thing that you brought up before, is extend that shoulder, almost like that reaching motion like you do for handstand, and then flat hand, and then fingertips, open out that chest, and then slowly try and let go. What you can also do is from your fingertips, if you're on your fingertips, opening out your chest, think about bringing your legs in, kind of like when you do an air chair, like we talked about, like bringing those legs in tight. Be on your fingertips, get ready to bring those legs in. As soon as I lift my hand up, I'm going to pull it back a little bit, not too much to where I fall, but really to make space to bring those legs in. So if I'm doing like a one-hand elbow freeze, that's kind of what I think about. I kind of mentally prep myself for it. So I'm here. The progression would be flat hand, shifting the weight, raising that shoulder, and then fingertips, letting go. As soon as I'm ready to freeze it, I'll get ready to pull those legs in and snap it in. Getting that snap, like for air chair, side chair, elbow freeze in one hand, bringing those legs in, it's going to be like learning a move on its own. Same thing with bouncing. They're kind of almost like two different moves. So just when you're practicing, be aware of that. Keep that in mind. It's going to be kind of like practicing two different moves. But yes, if you want to learn just that end freeze, really think about like opening out that chest. Once you're at the position, get ready to bring those legs in, let go, snap in.
go over transitioning from one elbow to the other, similar to the second elbow flare after the first one. Oh, like transitioning from here to here. Basically, wait, I don't know if that's right. So like where you're crossing like this. Don't know if that's the right thing. Okay, cool. Let's go over that transition. So when I'm doing that one, my hand position is going to be the same. It's going to be like this, and then switch, right? But it's not going to be a really fast switch. So I'm going to be at the point where I'm doing like a double elbow freeze like this. And this is going to be kind of difficult. Honestly, I struggle with this. I feel like I'm almost doing like an elbow planche at times. But like I spent some time practicing like double elbows like this and having them shoulder width apart. Picking up and just holding this. And then basically what I do is like shift from elbow Nike to the other elbow Nike. So I'll go from like let's say this elbow Nike, and then every time I switch, I'll be doing that same hand position on the other side. So it's not going to be like switching and my hands are going to be like misaligned. It's every time I switch, like I will redo that hand placement. So I'm here, I'm in Nike, I switch to double elbow, and I shift my weight. But that switch to my double elbow is really quick. I try not to stay there too much because personally I can't hold that double elbow that long. So I just use this as a quick switch and then move my hand like this. And then also same thing with the leg positions. So what I'm doing with my legs is I'm in Nike like this. So my elbow that's on the ground, that same leg is bent in Nike like this. And then as I switch, I shift my weight and then switch legs as well. So then that way I always have one part of my legs that's like tight. Is double elbow name important? To be honest, I never use double elbow, but that's just me personally. I hardly do elbow moves. So it just depends. If you are learning like elbow track, yeah, it may help you a lot. But for me, I only learned double elbow to learn elbow track, and I don't do elbow track that much even. So yeah, I would say, yeah, like if you're learning elbow track, definitely something to learn. But other than that, if there's a freeze you want to do utilizing the double elbow, then go ahead and learn it. If that's something that you think looks great, yeah, go for it. But for me, I just never really had a taste for a lot of elbow moves. But yeah, I learned it, so it's an option for me. But like I said, don't really like doing it. But yeah, so the principle's the same. I'm in elbow freeze like this. Oh wait, I switched to handstand first. So here, keep that bent leg tight, switch to my other elbow, and then bring the other leg tight and switch Nikes. Now it's one of the drills that you learn for elbow track. I'm not that good at elbow track, but yeah, definitely a useful drill, especially when you're like shifting your weight. So like I would do like an elbow critical catch, and then like use that transition to switch to my other side to do like my stronger arm, my dominant arm freezes. So yeah, if you already have both elbow freezes, I would definitely learn that double elbow and then practice switching between. And then some people, like when they do their elbow switches, they'll like just do this. I don't know how they do it, but I've seen like some people just like switch like this, like I don't know, like junior or something. But not really. I don't know if that's really a technique for everyone. I don't know. Whatever their technique is, I don't really know. So yeah, as far as elbow switches go, that's something I do. I don't know if it's the end all be all, but yeah, pretty much like anything I'm teaching, it's not the end all be all. So if you have another way you want to do it, another way you like doing it, or another way that adds more style or more individuality, whatever you're doing, then go ahead and do that. But just from like my logic and perspective, I think the way I'm teaching it might be a good way for people to, when they're first learning the move or when they're first trying to get something new, that might be more like energy effective. So yeah, if you have not followed me yet, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitch, subscribe, really helps me out a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in my DMs, private message, anything like that. You can send me your footage or ask questions. I'll be happy to answer, get back to you. If you post, tag me in your posts, your stories. It doesn't have to be freezes or stretches or anything like that. It can be anything. I love to see the progress. Let me know what's been working for you, what hasn't, things I can improve on with these workshops, things I can improve on with the stream. And then also, guys, DM me for joining after hours if that's something you're interested in. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really helps me out a lot. And I hope you guys take something out of it as well. So I will see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central Time. Same stream right here for the regular stream. Thursday and Friday, we're going to finish out the week strong. So I will see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Peace.